Well, I thought we were going live. No,
We're
okay, it
live.
says we are live. We should be live. Hello, everyone that is watching us. Hopefully, the almost 3 minutes that it cost us and us discussing incredibly important tactical details did not prevent us from,
Discussing.
or did not cause us to lose your attention, basically. Let me make sure that we're actually live. I got a notification we're
Yeah,
live.
we're live
Uh,
on YouTube.
and let's see. I hear my awful voice, which I don't want to hear, so we're good on that.
By the way, everybody who's watching, it'd be really cool if you started watching it on YouTube, whatever platform you're watching it on. That would really help the algorithm.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's going to tie in with our first question.
I'll actually here I can put a link to the YouTube stream in the comments for anybody that's watching it in other places. That might actually be helpful. And I'll explain why this is important in just a minute. But our YouTube content is about to start ramping up, I think. At least from Daniel and I's perspective, or on our end.
Mm.
We've got a lot of plans in the future. Some spicy stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to react to that you're going to want to see. There's a lot of you that might be in the private Facebook group. Notice we've spent a lot of time talking about Matthew Perry, as is apparently everybody else on the planet in the tabloids as of lately. And oh, we have sat through, Daniel, I think, has sat through the whole interview, which is very brave of him. I've made it through big chunks of it. Couldn't do it the whole thing and edit it at the same time. It was just too much for my mental health, between like the torture of him and then the torture of having to use Adobe software that works against me every waking moment that I'm using it. So it was just too much. But we will be responding to that. So I'm hoping to have Daniel and I's reaction to part one of, you said five, I think? I wanted you to
Yeah,
say five.
it's a five.
Okay.
It's cut it in
Oh,
five
sorry,
pieces.
excuse pardon my French. That's unfortunate. But if it's five pieces, we will react to all five. So it will be part one of five for reactions to Matthew Perry, also known as Chandler of Friends, very famous. If you're not familiar with Friends, and you're either really, really young, and I'm sorry you're at the point where you need help with your substance abuse problem already, but we're here to help you, and we're glad that you came to us first, or I don't know how you missed Friends. I don't even like Friends. I don't even think it's a funny show. I think it's overrated, and I still like it brings back nostalgia for me. But that's completely beside the point. We're gonna be so yeah, we'll be doing a live react. What's live? We recorded it live. It's a raw reaction of Daniel and I responding to Matthew Perry's full extended Diane Sawyer interview. And I think in the 8 minutes of worth of video yesterday, it took us 75 minutes to respond to it. And that's before I trimmed it down. So, like, there's a lot of stuff there to say. Every single sentence is like a new banger straight out the book of like most toxic crap you can imagine, well, from AA or from the rooms or from somewhere else. And he still looks sad and unhealthy, and the whole thing is still tragic. So, it's the whole thing is sad. But as with all things that are sad and appropriate timed, we're going to try to milk it to get as much attention as possible because that's the best way that we can help the most people. Mr. Reiner and the comment says it hurt to watch the MP interview, but I hope you mean Matthew Peterson and not some misspelling of my name like Matthew Parks. Yes, I agree. It was, man, just watching the 8 minute version was rough for me, man. Um, It was like my girlfriend was like, I had my headphones on watching, and she was like, "What are you watching? Are you okay?" And I was just like, I don't even know how to begin to describe to you what it is that I'm listening to right now. It's that bad. Crystal, you can love Friends. I know plenty of people that do. I watched it with an ex-girlfriend that I'm not particularly fond of for years, so maybe that's why I don't like it as much. So I think if you remove the laugh track, the show becomes like really strange and not funny. So that was kind of a weird realization. Like if you ever YouTube like yeah, I know. I was kidding. I know MP is Matthew Perry. I would hope, and not Matthew Parks. But it's perfectly okay. I respect anyone's opinion on media or music or whatever. I used to be a gatekeeper about an edgy gatekeeper about music and media and stuff like that. And then I stopped being 13 and realized it wasn't cool to gatekeep stuff and doesn't help anyone and doesn't even help your own scene because it doesn't grow stuff. So anyway, they'd be like if the freedom model we were like, sorry bro, you're not smart enough or not cool enough to read the freedom model. Like how would that help our business? It's just it's that level of maturity. Anyway, we're like way off the rails now. You can tell we've been talking about this a whole lot recently. Welcome for those of you who are not normally here. My name is oh where I have the wrong banner up. I'll fix that real quick. My name is Matthew Sparks. This is my coworker and friend Daniel Polorge. Daniel, there we go.
Yep, there
Live
you
unit. There we go. So we go. The name's right and everything. Matthew Sparks. This is me on the left. Daniel Polorge. Those are our emails below us. Feel free to email us at any time. The phone number, as always, is 188-424-2626. I think I can do that entirely from memory now. Go to thefreedommodel.org. Some of you may not know, but we have done a huge shift of focus, and that we will be spending a lot of more time. Our online presence will grow significantly, as in the future, coming months, and hopefully over the next year and years following. And you know, if business grows, you know, maybe we'll need more coaches, and maybe some of you guys watching this that are here, you know, just around the early days. That's how I got involved with this. I just hung around because I liked these guys so much. Because Michelle and Steven and Michelle, I said Michelle twice, Michelle, Mark, and Steven were so kind to me and spent so much time going out of their way to help me after I just read their book, that I just stuck around. And eventually that's how I got involved with this because it was the only thing that I had ever believed in. Anyway, so every first and third Wednesday of the month, we do get together and we answer questions either sent to us privately or posted in our private Facebook group or however way that we come across them. Sometimes there'll be conversations or just thoughts
go.
that I had in the day in the shower or whatever it is. We do have a number. I think today I actually need to pull up the questions. Daniel, while I do that, is there anything that you need to plug or want to mention?
Well, listen, when we're talking about the questions that we answer, I think the viewers should know that we will put priority on questions that you put in the comment section in the YouTube video, right? Because that's
Right.
really going to help the algorithm to get us to have more exposure. So, you know, if you have any questions, any comments, please bring them there, and we'll do our utmost best to answer them as soon as like right to the on the next show when we see them. So
Right.
we will be scouring through YouTube to get those questions and comments.
Normally, one of us will make a post in the private Facebook group too, which anyone can join. You just have to answer some basic questions and find it
Yeah,
on Facebook. I noticed Daniel made a post a couple days ago. Like, are there any questions you want us? If you post questions there, we will give priority to those questions as well, because obviously those are very fresh, and those were questions that were specifically given to one of the hosts of the show, which means
exactly.
you want us to talk about them. You know, have some faith in our ability to answer the questions, which hopefully at some point you do. We've been doing this for some time. I think we took over this in what, like March, maybe, somewhere
I
there.
forget.
I don't
No,
remember.
it was after that. I
It
think
was
it was
after
like,
that?
yeah, I think it was around like April or May, around that.
Okay.
We'd have to check. I'd have to check, but
All
yeah,
time and space has become meaningless to me in the last 2 or 3 years, anyway.
yeah.
Um,
Either
uh,
way, we are where we are at this point.
right. Without further ado, unless I'm missing something, Daniel, I will jump into the first question.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead because we got a lot of stuff today.
All right, cool. That's what I love to hear. Um, yes, can you please address? I mean, yes, probably being yes. Can you answer this question? I would assume by like yes, I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, you mean that too. Yes, I'm excited to be here. Can you please address how we can get the word out faster to the world that the current system is broken, and what can we do to get more people to seriously look at the freedom model so we can stop this madness? This question is multifaceted, kind of complex to answer, and kind of may sound intimidating at first, and at least the way that I will describe it. But maybe Daniel sometimes will sound more positive than me. Maybe vice versa in other
Yeah.
times. But
No,
uh,
I have a very straightforward answer for that.
yeah.
And
So
that's
what would you say?
Yeah, it comes back down to YouTube, right? We have to get as much exposure on there so the algorithm starts kicking in and proposes our videos to a wider audience. So the idea
Yeah.
would be to, of course, watch this stuff on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to our channel,
Oh, I
click
was
the
going to share the link. I'm going to
yeah,
put that in the chat.
click the bell, and of course, share this stuff, share our videos on social media, preferably with the settings set to everyone. you know Obviously, some people, that really depends on where you're at in your life. Some people want to keep this stuff a little bit more private, so but preferably to everyone. But yeah, that's really where the main focus should be, is to really bring that forward. And like Matthew said, we're going to be doing a series of React videos on stuff. So again, that's going to be something that's going to be worthy of sharing. And of course, engagement is always a huge deal. So whether you like our video or don't like our video, whether you click like or click dislike, that's on you. But just do one of those to help us get more exposure. And comment in the comment section. Is there anything that wasn't clear? Do you have any questions?
Right.
Is there stuff that you disagree with? So on and so forth. Just bring all that stuff to YouTube to really help push that algorithm, because like I said, once YouTube goes, oh, this is something that people are engaging with, it's going to start exposing it to more
Right.
people.
So the way I have a personal channel on the side that makes like really niche videos about nothing related to substance abuse that I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing or talking about here because it's not the time or the place. But it has given me some insight into what picks up comments, what picks up views, what doesn't. Because I think I have accumulated something like over 1 million cumulative views over the last year or something insane like that. And a lot of that is just pure luck and time and placement. So the way that YouTube often works is the performance of the video in the early hours of it being uploaded. I don't know if it's in the first 24 or the first 36 or first 48, but that performance early on determines how much, or it sort of gives them an idea. It helps their model determine how much people are digging this video. It's the same thing with how much people comment with it, what the level of engagement with it is, whether or not you like or dislike it. Both are forms of engagement, which are both welcome for us. I think we said in our reaction video, which hopefully, like I said, will be up there soon. Like, if you hate us and hate everything that we say, we would love to hear about it in the comments. Please take the time. Nothing would make us feel better than for you to take the time for you to tell us how much you hate everything that we say and how dangerous it is, and list out in a bulleted form, preferably with citations like I would do in a comment or in a Facebook comment, because that's how overboard I go, of things that you disagree with. And we will gladly engage with anyone about this.
Mhm.
If you want to prepare some sort of like recorded setup, or something like that, that we can negotiate terms for that, because obviously we're not going to walk into a troll ambush or something insane like that. I know I've been on the internet since before I could read. I'm not going to fall for anything like that. Um, but like, we will engage with just about anyone. We are confident enough in our positions to debate this with anyone, and and the benefit of being an evidence-based program, one that's actually built from the ground up based on fact and not from the top down with your conclusion decided, and then you just cherry pick whatever your facts are, what your opinions believe, which is sort of how AA and the disease model and everything sort of came about, which is a whole different historical story. But is that you can't, even whenever you're wrong, you can still be right because you just change to what the new information says, what the new data says. Like, so if it turns out that, like, I'm pretty comfortable in saying, and I'm pretty sure Mark and Michelle and Daniel would be comfortable saying, that if we figure it out, and it's highly unlikely at this point, given the sheer longitude, volume of data in favor of our positions at this point, that we were wrong about all of this, we would have a serious meeting where we would have to talk about what we were going to do moving forward, because like, the truth will always win out in our mind, and if we're no longer with the truth, we're not going to win. Like, which means we're
Yeah.
not, if we're not telling people the truth, aka which is what we consider winning. We're not helping people. Like we can only help people with the truth. We're not going to lie to you to try to get you better because that's what treatment does, and that's why it doesn't help anybody. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think my original tangent to this was
Yeah, no, I agree fully when it comes to that. In fact, I just did an interview for with Bobby C. And
mhm.
before the show, we were talking, and he asked me that. He's like, "Well, what if the freedom model was completely wrong? What's your stance on that?" And I'm like, "I'd just walk away." Like
Right.
when I realized that
Go back
12
to reading
step,
books and figuring out what else was right.
yeah, when I realized that 12 step was a lie, I walked away from like 12 years of heavy involvement. And I would do exactly the same thing. If I'm not standing by the truth, it's like it's not worth it. Just move
I
on.
did it. I did it when
So
with my political beliefs in my early 20s. I had to burn everything that I thought was real to the ground, which was very hard to do. It cost me some relationships with some close or extensive family members. Perhaps you'd have to ask them. I wouldn't know. Um, and
yeah,
then with the addiction stuff too. I was just like everything that I was learned in treatment and all this stuff that I had been taught by my family and all these quote unquote professionals was wrong, and I had to deal with that. And like I just wrote a blog article for the website on the blog called I think it's called the time the AA takes from you, and it's about how time is the most precious resource because you can't ever get it back, and dealing with the grieving and the anger of having lost that time living a lie, and which is a very real process that I think a lot of people have to deal with. And being because that was one of the questions we got from the last Q&As was like, how is it normal for me to be this pissed off about it? And like, absolutely, man, I was pissed off for like a year. It's not normal to live pissed off forever. You're not. I mean, people in AA meetings are already unhappy. I mean, you being pissed off isn't going to make them any less or more unhappy. And they're not thinking about you. Probably, maybe they are. They're who knows what they're thinking
yeah,
about.
most likely not.
But we're not sitting around our office or our digital office like thinking about how mad we are about it. AA. That's just not what we spend our time doing. None of us are mad. Actually, you'll find that most of us are very pleasant, maybe even obnoxiously happy to be around sometimes. Um, I know when my girlfriend just met me, whenever she was still in A, she told me that I was annoyingly positive to the point that it was both obnoxious and intimidating. Um,
All right. But
you,
we
uh,
got we got 7 questions today, so we should start running.
yeah,
I
so
don't even know if we're going to pull everything off within an hour, so we might have to cut off some of the questions around the end.
um, yeah, potentially. Sorry, I was answering. I think Michelle asked about commenting on YouTube. So as far as people, how can we stop getting people to take a look at it? Our current answer to that is to like, subscribe, watch the YouTube channel. It will be growing. You're going to get new content. It's probably going to
Yeah.
catch more views than some of the more recent stuff. Then the shorts don't normally get a lot of views, but they're good for building a lot of attention and bringing attention to the channel. They're also, I believe Mark and Michelle have built a relatively sizable following on TikTok last I checked. Um, so that's another place. But digital settings, particularly YouTube right now. Watch this on
Yeah.
YouTube, subscribe, engage, comment, even if it's just, hey, thanks for being here, or I hated this, or like this was great for my 5 minute toilet break, or whatever. Like we don't care. Engagement, it helps us. It helps us get the word out. The more people that know about this, the better. Because like we're not going to infiltrate treatment centers and like hand the book out to people. We'll get thrown in jail for breaking and entering, and we go
Yeah.
back to we're being told that we're killing people. Anyway, next question. Um, I feel like once I've started debating in my head whether to use or to not, like I've actually already unconsciously decided. Often there are plenty of reasons not to, but I feel like there's no point in going through that mental battle because I already know the outcome. I don't look for reasons to do it either. I do it because I want to. But sometimes I'd like to feel like I had more of a choice. I'm locked into a pattern that I don't understand how to break. Anything you have to say about this would be gratefully received. I believe I have free will. I just don't believe I am exercising that. Well, free will is an absolute. You are still you're absolutely exercising your absolute free will at every moment. If you feel like there's not much of a choice to be made, that's because your mind is so made up, or your options are so unappealing compared to substance use at that time, whatever your perception of options are, that it doesn't feel like much of a choice. It'd be like me deciding like, am I gonna eat like a hamburger for dinner, or like a rod left over from the Chernobyl reactor explosion from the Ukraine. Like, one is going to kill me because of radioactive exposure, and one's a hamburger. Like, that's not a choice I would have to think about. Like, it could be at that level for you. Drug use can your mind could still be that enjoyable. That's kind of a simplistic answer if you want to get into that a little more, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, like what I noticed right away was this idea of a battle, right? So it's basically you're ambivalent. And, like you were saying, the reason why this person is ambivalent is because the drug mythology has obviously not been busted, right? The voodoo, what the Grand Prix calls the voodoo pharmacology. So, you're talking about, I don't look for reasons to do it. I do it because I want to. Well, there's reasons for you wanting to,
Right.
right? So the fact that you're not doing that process consciously, sitting down and making a list of all the reasons why you want to, it doesn't mean there isn't a list. It just
Right.
means that list is kind of automatic. It's put on automatic, and you don't have to shift gears. It's already
Right.
there.
It might be built based on just experiences you haven't thought about on a deep level,
Yeah,
just like times you've had gotten high over and over again and had a great time or whatever. Maybe you've had a few bad
exactly.
times, so now you're starting to question it, but now it's like, why do I like it to begin with? Well, I've never really thought about it, but I know I've had all these
Yeah,
great times,
yeah,
etc. This is where some of the work comes in with the book, is when you really start to pull apart the whys underneath the feelings and underneath the desires. You do have the
yeah,
free will, and you are choosing every time. That doesn't mean the choice isn't hard. I always have to tell people that, because they think us saying it's a choice means it's dismissive. It's absolutely not. Choices, like the choice to get divorced, I always say, is very, very difficult. I would not just be like, dude, just get divorced. It's just a choice, bro. Like, I would never you demean someone to that. It's
yeah,
not that's not what we're
yeah.
talking
No,
about.
this is an issue that probably the best way to go through it would be to through coaching, whether that's with Mark or Michelle or me or Matthew, to just, so we really sort through this stuff, because obviously, you haven't really seen what the reasons are behind that, and when just before that, there are plenty of reasons not to, but that's not how it works, right? It's like, well, yeah, I don't want this, I don't want that, there's plenty of reasons why I don't want to eat ice cream. But if I really, really love ice cream, and I feel that in the moment the ice cream is going to feel so good coming down my mouth and blah, blah, blah. And I associate all these powers to the ice cream of relaxing me, or, just making me right, or whatever. The fact that, yeah, ice cream is going to make me fat and it's expensive, that's not going to be a good motivator to get me to like not eat ice cream. Right.
Right.
And so, like I said, when the person's talking about ambivalence, about the mental battle, that's what you're talking about. You're ambivalent. You kind of want two different things. And both of those are not giving you what you want. So that's where coaching can come and help, and to sort through that stuff. Of course, there's other options, like going through the book or through the video program. But for some people, coaching is really the way that they have to go in order to
Right.
sort through
They
this
really
stuff.
need like a really individualized experience,
Yeah,
because they're having a
yeah,
hard time. Because like it's hard for us to tell you without knowing a bunch about your background and your history,
exactly,
and that's not something we're going to get done in a Facebook DM or anything like that. You would need coaching for that. So,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, he's exactly right. As far
So
as there was one other thing about that you made about positive motivation, and that uh, you made the way the you made a comment that like it doesn't work like in the way that like negative motivators are not sufficient deterrents.
yeah,
There's a chapter. Do we not have a call? We have motivators versus deterrents, as well as
yeah,
causes versus reasons. There's actually a character in the show Breaking Bad, Gus, if anyone has ever watched, who says something akin to the idea that he believes that positive motivation and an employee in his company feeling proud of their work and believing that they're happy about what they do will infinitely sustain them longer than any fear of any consequence. In AA's world, that's death, jails, and institutions, which is their perpetual motivation, which is why it's such a battle to them, because they're two things. They're having to give up something they still want to do because they haven't addressed the fact that they want to do it. And two, they're using purely consequences to run from that.
yeah,
And that's just not, that's a difficult, They accuse other people of white knuckling it. Like I can't think of a worse version of white knuckling it than that man.
Yeah,
So
no, and that's something. If we have the time to get to that, to the last question, there's a question that's very similar to that, where we will be addressing the positive drive principle straight up. So hopefully that was helpful, but to the person asking the question. But yeah, this is a very it's not something that we can address as simply as just saying, well, that's what you have to do.
yeah,
This is really a coaching thing, because there's reasons why you're acting the way you are. There's motivators behind every behavior, and so if you're not seeing that, sometimes it can be very hard to see that. But why we're here, to help people clear through that stuff, because once you come to the realization that a lot of those motivators are actually not anything objective, they fall by
right.
the wayside, and it's a lot easier to just make a different decision in life.
Yeah, once you realize, oh, this isn't really doing for me what I thought it was, and it hasn't been for some time, or I'm just doing this because I've always done it, and it's what makes me feel comfortable, and not doing it makes me feel out of place or anxiety. But really, I'm okay without it. Like sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's way more complex, which is why we often recommend coaching for very specific cases. Like, why are my specific reasons not clear to me? We can't really help you diagnose that without working with you one on one. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that's just the way that it is. People are complex, and their relationships with their drugs can be
yeah,
pretty complex too and multifaceted. So just
exactly.
know that nothing is causing you to do drugs. You're never powerless. There are reasons, they do exist. You can find them and you can get better. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
finding them and rectifying them.
Yeah, no, you could figure it out just through the book, through the online program. Coaching is a shortcut. If you don't want to sit down and put in like a gazillion hours to figure this stuff out on your own, because not everybody kind of like you know learns at the same pace. That's what tutors are for. That's what coaching is for. So we could help you sort through that stuff one on one.
Or oftentimes, we find that the information makes logical sense to people that have read the book, but it's not emotionally setting in. Like it's not impacting them on a deep enough level. It's not penetrating to the point where it's actually altering their framework with which they view the world. It's like logically, I know that's true, but I still feel like on some deeper level that like the original thing that I thought was right. And people can get stuck there, and that could take maybe just the right person saying the right anecdote or relating to you the certain way or explaining a topic with a certain metaphor. It could be a million different things, which again, coaching. That's why
Yep.
that's why we created it. It's the fastest way we can get to you guys without you guys having to travel or spend a fortune going to $1,000 a day, 30 days of inpatient treatment, 12-step rehab. You can just work one on one with us, and we can help you get straight to the actual problem instead of avoiding it with AA meetings and acupuncture and equine therapy and riflery and archery and whatever BS other treatments you might or may not have encountered in treatment. I have encountered all of those that I just listed, which is
Yeah.
embarrassing. But anyway, the next question we'll move on to. Oh, good. We got some Matthew Perry content here. Um, I just read about Matthew Perry and that he's gone to rehab 15 times and spent 9 million on treatment, and then a bunch of emojis that look astounded, which is probably what my face also looked like whenever he said that in the video. You'll see it on the video when it gets posted eventually on Thursday, on Friday. How can they sell this thing? How can they still sell that this still works? It's mind blowing. Read a quote. I read a quote under it saying, no amount of money will help you if you don't do the work." So, one of the hilarious things about treatment in an AA is that they defeat their own claims and their own premises and their own foundations all the times with stuff like this. Where at one time they tell you, like they'll have treatment professionals continuing to push you to go back to treatment over and over again, and then you realize you'll talk to a bunch of people in an AA meeting. You're like, you don't need to go to treatment. You just need to go to AA meetings and work the steps. That's what they're going to teach you how to do in treatment, and that's free. And you're like, okay, well, why am I paying for treatment then? And they're like, no, well, in treatment you get like well, I mean, some even aren't even medical facilities. I don't even know if they have licensed medical staff anywhere on campus because I just know some rehabs are basically just religious boot camps. But like It's just like all of it is nonsensical, and the harder you think about it, the more your brain is going to hurt. You've already sort of pierced the surface by saying, how can they sell this thing if it still works? I read a quote, no amount of money will help you if you don't do the work. Yeah, if $9 million, 15 rehabs, 65 detoxes, over 6,000 AA meetings, what else am I missing? 30 years of therapy, 14 surgeries, including having a temporary colostomy bag because his colon exploded because he was so constipated because he was taking so many Vicodin every day. Like I remember all this just from watching the interview. And the dude like is still just like I think he's got like 18 months maybe I think or
I
something
don't
like that.
think you even mentioned how much quote unquote time he
I may
had.
have made that up. I may have just assumed it. He may have
Yeah.
had 30 seconds walking into that interview. I don't know. He did look kind of bad, but that could have just been from all the medical problems.
Yeah, no,
I was trying not to judge, but he
he's
didn't
been
look that
banged up,
good.
so
Yeah. Like one of the videos that or one of the titles that I considered giving to one of our reaction videos, whether my prepared response or Daniel and I's combo response was the definition of insanity. The Matthew Perry story or something like that, because the definition of insanity, as Daniel beat me to it as we were recording this yesterday, so I will, with this will live on in live forever, but on YouTube where people actually watch, he will be the first person to say this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results, which they tell you that in the rooms all the time, which is another example of just what I began this with, of them constantly saying things that contradict other things that they say. Because if you fail, it's never the step's fault. It's always you didn't do the steps right. You didn't call your sponsor enough. You didn't go to enough meetings. You didn't want bad enough. If someone dies, and this is the kind of shit that bothered me the most, it was like he just didn't want it bad enough. Some people were sicker than others, and then they would just use this friend of mine's death oftentimes as a platform, basically to pat themselves on the back about the fact that they were still safe from their disease that was apparently still lurking in the parking lot, waiting to murder them in cold blood outside. Like it was both hilariously nonsensical and incredibly insulting and disturbing simultaneously. It was like being in A Clockwork Orange and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest simultaneously on acid and watching The Matrix upside down in Mandarin. Nothing about it made sense. Whatever the most nonsense metaphor I could come up with that wouldn't touch being in AA meetings if you had never been there before and never heard any of that stuff before and just listening to it for 15 minutes. Like I
yeah.
challenge people here because I do have students every now and then who've never been to AA meetings. It's like not that I would ever advise you to go to one, but if you were to go to one and sit and listen there for 50 minutes, you would leave there thinking, A, I want to drink now, and I didn't want to drink before, and B, that was some of the craziest shit I've ever heard in my whole life. And you would be exactly right. The crazy thing is, if you're in AA and you start to think that, they convince you you are the crazy person. I felt like I was the crazy person for at least half a decade. I felt like I was the loner and I was insane because I couldn't use drugs successfully because AA could successfully convince me that I was broken. But I also hated AA and it didn't make sense to me, so I didn't relate to these people. So not only did I suck at real life, but I also sucked so much that I also sucked at the stuff that was supposed to be for the people who sucked at real life and to recover and return to real life. I couldn't do that right either. So I couldn't do anything right in my mind. I was like perpetually broken. And then I had Mark, the first time I ever talked to him, he was the first person to ever tell me this after 6 years of treatment. There's nothing wrong with you and you're not broken. And I think I cried to him on the phone as a grown ass man to him. The first time I ever talked to him. He was the first person to ever tell me that. And it was earth shattering to me. No one had ever told me that I wasn't broken. I thought I was. I had to go to get I had to go back to school and get a degree about my own brain to prove to myself like 100% certainty that I wasn't broken and that this wasn't permanent. And I can confirm to you with my armchair undergraduate authority that none of you are broken. There's nothing wrong with any of you that's permanent that can't be fixed. And we will do all of our best to help you fix it. Which is why if you have individual problems, then the book and the Q and A's and the workbook or the online program isn't doing it. Coaching, we can work with you individually, which is what I recommend. Daniel, I hijacked that because you hijacked so much of my content on the Matthew Perry video. So that was just my little 5 minute revenge
Yeah.
here. You want to
Well, I
go?
think it's funny. I received Michelle's email about the Matthew Perry interview this morning, and so I read that, and I kind of laughed because I noticed that we pretty much all say the same thing. We phrase it differently at times, but it's pretty much always the same thing. So I was like, oh, our video is going to come out after, and it's going to sound like we hijacked those ideas because it's basically the same ideas.
Right. There's only so many ways. If you're using the truth is absolute. It remains the same.
Yeah.
And
There's only so many ways that you can say exactly the same thing. But for me, what was very, very revealing was that comment, about doing the work. I remember people saying like, I did the work because like I've done the steps. But if you sit down and really analyze how step work works, what the premises of AA, like it's a living process, right? Like 10, 11, and 12 are something that you're permanently doing, right? You're constantly doing that. So there is no such thing as having done the work. So it's basically you have to be out there recruiting and taking people through the steps, like at all times, okay? Right. And at any point in time, if you stop doing that, okay, and then something happens, well, you see he stopped doing the work, right? And if you're still doing that and if things don't work out for you, well, he must have left something out of his fifth step, or he didn't grasp the first step properly.
They will find something that you did wrong.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's never the program. It's always you. And I remember back in the day, when I started going to the rooms, I never even considered the idea of going to rehab. And that was simply because the saying back then was rehab is a $30,000 big book. And that's because, that's what they teach you in rehab. You go to rehab and they'll take you through step work, and they might add in a little bit of so-called cognitive behavioral therapy. Like I know that some places even call
we had therapists, bro. They were just 12 steppers with LCDC, which is counseling license.
I've seen people do so-called CBT fifth steps. Right. And that's fairly popular among some groups of smart recovery people. So anyways, it's a bit insane, but yeah, I've seen it.
So it's going to upset me.
It's completely messed up. I could send links if anyone's interested, just put a comment in the comment section down on the YouTube video, and I'll make sure to get that information to you. But yeah, that's what's going on. So this idea that like, oh, well, it's because, you just have to do the work. It's not about the money. Well, in some respect, I agree, but not the work as in the step work, right? What you have to do is sort through all the nonsense, and really take an objective look at your preference and look at, well, am I really getting out of this experience what I think I'm getting, right? And so that is a certain level of work to sit down and go through
this program. It's just not lifelong, and it's not perpetually moving the goalposts. And
the whole online coaching thing is, I calculated it for someone to go through the entire online coaching program, it's roughly 40 hours of work, right? Between reading the book, answering the questions in the workbook, and taking the classes with the coach and just sitting down and going through it. It's roughly like 40 to 45 hours. It really depends on your reading speed and your reading comprehension. Because of course some people are going to need a little bit more classes than others.
Some we always make working jobs or have kids or families or what other stuff too. Like we work with people from all backgrounds. It's not just
exactly. But the point is there's a limited amount of knowledge that you have to go through in order to upgrade your mental perception of both the substance and yourself and your relationship with that substance in order to move on. But there is this point where you do move on, right? And it's not that much effort, No. But when this person's talking about doing the work, they're talking about actively preaching and taking people through the faith healing process called the 12 steps and doing this repeatedly forever, for the rest of your life. And, that doesn't include the meetings that you have to do, the after meetings that you have to do, the service work that you have to do, making sure that you stay in contact with your sponsor on a regular basis, and all the finances that are involved, right? So buying the literature, handing out the literature to the newcomer, putting the dollar in the basket, and, and all the other extracurricular activities, because of course, as a quote unquote addict, you know, you're at risk at going to like a normal barbecue where there might be someone who's getting drunk, you know, so you have to go to the AA or NA barbecues where everyone's sober. So, yeah, we're not talking about the same thing at all, but you know, when someone says doing the work, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about just being a very active member within the cult that's doing, that's heavily involved in the faith healing process called the 12 steps.
Right. The Work is another one of those, which is a shame because one of my favorite albums of like the last year or two is called The Work. It's one of the blacklisted phrases, one of the mini blacklisted phrases from my vocabulary, right next to stinking thinking.
Yeah, which I used in the video, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, I promised myself a year ago when I made a video for this channel that I would never say this again, and here I am. I've said it for the second time. Once a year is my max, apparently. All right. I just got reamed with this for putting an excerpt from TFM on my page. Yeah. People have a tendency to ream you if you're friends with friends or family members in AA. If you put any TFM stuff online, you are actually claiming that there is no disease of addiction. You were horrifyingly incorrect. Substance use disorder is real, and we need more people advocating for different successful treatment programs to assist with this. Not people complaining. It is simply a matter of willpower. Shame on you. Man, she strawman the crap out of your argument, first of all. The freedom model at no point says this is not, this is a matter of willpower. In fact, we actively go out of our way to say that it's not a matter of willpower. That's the absolute wrong way to be thinking that. And then the person says we need people advocating for different successful treatment programs, which is why I'm reaming you for advocating for something different. Like, I can tell this person has been involved in AA because they can't help but contradict themselves, like within the same sentence. It's like, it's just like this, it's almost like a Tourette's level tic at this point.
Like, there's a lot of contradictions in there. Like the first sentence is extremely contradiction. Like the first two ones, no, actually the whole thing, if I reread it, because like they say you're claiming that there's no disease of addiction, and then they talk about substance use disorder. But that's a psychiatric diagnosis. We're not talking about the brain disease. So you're basically saying that there's a brain disease by acknowledging the fact that the person has a psychiatric disorder that's not a disease, right? That makes no sense.
Even aware of their own terminology differences. To them, it's all the same. It's all this tool of acceptable jargon they've heard in meetings a million times that they know is safe for them to use and that they can attack people with. You are claiming that there's no disease of an addiction. You are horrifyingly incorrect. If you want to put me in touch with this person, I can send them unofficially a 400 to 600 page published textbook for universities challenging the disease concept of addiction. And it represents both sides pretty adequately. It does a good job. Yeah. And guess who comes out on top? The non-disease people. Unless you go, the only way the disease model wins is if you start defining disease in a way that makes the word borderline meaningless, and that basically you make disease meaning societally undesirable behavior. That's the way. Like if whatever you're doing, it's like if once homosexuality was considered a disease in that same way, or like women wanting to vote used to be called hysteria, like considering that a disease, like wanting to have equal rights. Like that's the level of thinking we're dealing with here when considering addiction of a disease. It's not. There's no.
Drapetomania was the same thing. That's when slaves would run away from their owners.
When they would want freedom.
Yeah, because they had drapetomania, right? So they had a disease, right? And of course, the guy who like pretty much coined all these ideas, Benjamin Rush, he thought that being black was a disease, and he also thought that being a criminal was a disease, right? So we have to understand that like these are very confused ideas that are, based on some old people's perceptions of the world, and have nothing to do with objective scientific reality. It was a huge straw man, because when you think about it, like how much willpower does it take to not do something that you don't want to do? That's really what we're advocating for is, sorting through all the nonsense in order to figure out what's true and what's not true. And it's got this has nothing to do with white knuckling it, because when you get to the point where you simply want to move on, you're like, you know what, this behavior is no longer serving me. I'm just going to move on to a different behavior that is serving me. It takes no willpower whatsoever to continue in that new direction, right? There's no effort whatsoever involved in that. But if you think that you have a disease or a disorder, that there's something functionally wrong with you as a person, yeah, now you're fighting, right? Now you're white knuckling. Now you have this idea that you have to have a strong will in order to, break through this problem that you have that's part of you, you know. So they're actually, like, the person who wrote this comment is very, very confused. They're conflating a bunch of stuff, and they're not even realizing that they're the one that's advocating for willpower.
Right, exactly. Everyone that describes this as a battle is describing an effort of willpower. It is one
Exactly.
of an immense effort, and you'll notice it in the Matthew Perry interview when she describes his surgery scars as like battle wounds, and like he's been fighting this secret war his whole life. Like he's been deployed to Fallujah for the last decade, except it's been stuck in like the early 2000s for some reason, and he was like in SEAL Team One. It's like it's unbelievable. Again, it's just another instance of people. They're just it's just unbelievable, the ability to completely contradict every foundational principle that they have within the same sentence or within the follow-up sentence. It's just
Yeah.
I just it
Yeah.
hurts. It hurts me to think about. How do I just a subject of willpower? You don't, because it's irrelevant. You
Yeah.
can
Exactly. Total straw man.
Yeah, if they so it ask the person. So if you believe addiction is a brain disease, it's often compared to like cancer or diabetes. Like if you're and you go to your doctor and your doctor tells you, well, you need to go get a sponsor and you need to do an inventory of all the moral sins that you've committed. You need to make amends for those things. You need to pray about the cancer every day, and that's going to be your treatment. And you're going to be like, no chemo, like. Is this a real medical problem? Are you a witch doctor? Like, are you losing your mind? Is this a joke? Like, this can't be a legitimate medical condition, and all of these things that these people claim addiction to be true. They cannot simultaneously exist in the same world. It's impossible by their very definitions of these things. They cannot coexist, and they're just so lost in this. And I don't blame them. It's just because as a society we're taught not to question this. But just a simple amount of critical observation will show you that most of this can't coexist. The vast majority, if not all of it, can't. Every now and then, maybe I'll never say. It's hard for me to say absolutes. Maybe someone every now and then in a meeting will say something correct on accident.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you
but
have to want to stop in order to stop, right?
right,
That's
which doesn't make sense. They're still They're right
yeah.
that you have to want to stop. But they're still contradicting because like I thought God was supposed to
Exactly.
relieve you on a daily basis only of your spiritual malady.
Exactly. And if it is an act of God, why are you going to meetings? Why do you have to put in the work? Why do you have to do any of this stuff? Why do you have to put any kind of effort if you're not supposed to be using your will whatsoever? That's the first thing that they'll tell you is, you have to want it to work. You know, well, okay, but we're not talking about will. Like, it's confused. It's very confused thinking. And yeah, I would not sit down and argue with this person for extended periods of time, just because they're just completely confused. And this reminds me of someone who commented, what was it, a month or 2 months ago on our YouTube stuff. And their thinking pattern was completely confused, just like that. It was the same kind of stuff, where it was like
Yeah.
jumping from one point to the other, and these things were not even related properly. And yeah, there's just a point where you have to go, okay, and just move on, you know. So
And also, every time we would defeat one of their points, they would just move the goalposts and then
yeah,
change it to something else and never acknowledge taking the L. Or it's just like some people don't want their mind to be changed, and that's fine. We're not here to change their mind. We're here to save everyone else because, like, I've been to too many funerals where parents have had to bury their kids at this point because there's so much fentanyl into the street, and I know parents have sent their kid to rehab 9 times. So he's convinced that he's broken forever and he's going to want drugs forever. So at this point, F it. Like, I'm just going to go get loaded. It's that or go to these freaking meetings that I can't stand forever and tell everyone that I'm an alcoholic for the rest of my life and never be normal. Screw that. That's where I was at for years. I did horrible damage to myself. I almost died being in that state. It was horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I could just pull just one person out of that, which I have at this point, thankfully, like I would have considered this. I could hang this up at this point and be satisfied, just having prevented one person from having to go through that, just because of how horrible it is. But AA sends almost everyone down that path, which is why it has to be replaced and dismantled.
Okay. We got 3 questions and I'd say about 10, 15 minutes left. So we're going to have to.
Let's see. Oh, somebody posted. There's a link to Lean Games, which is not a website that I've.
Yeah. No,
I've
I
not
read
needed
that
Lean
article.
Games
It was an interesting article. And if you don't want to comment on that, I have a quick comment on that. So that's going to be a quick question. But let's just go to that first one.
Okay.
I was having a chat.
Okay, I was having a chat with a friend I met in rehab yesterday. Basically, I got a bit fed up with her because all she ever talks about is quitting drinking, but she never quit. She's 60 now, and she's just a phone relationship, really. She always calls me and says, "Did you drink today?" or "How many days are you now?" And I really want to break free from that sort of thinking. As it says in the Freedom Model, it's depressing as F. Anyway, we were talking, and I was trying to tell her my thoughts. I asked her, when did she go to her first rehab? When was the longest she stayed abstinence? 28 years ago, she went into her first rehab at 33. 28 years ago. The longest she has been sober was 6 weeks. How depressing. I was like, dude, you obviously love drinking, but she seems so convinced that she's just an alcoholic and powerless of her life. I feel like I'm starting to see the woods from the trees. I've been in and out of AA for 10 years. Every time I try to leave it, I'm hit with a maybe I'm in denial thinking. To be honest, when I do have a drink, I do seem to drink heavily, so that's a bit worrisome. It's not. It just means you probably prefer to drink heavily because you still perceive it to be enjoyable or you have some lasting preference for it. Again, we could address that one-on-one if you wanted to. But anyway, continuing. Some people from AA can be really nice, not all, but a handful. There's certainly plenty of great people in AA. Now we're not saying all these people are bad people. I mean, there are plenty of people in treatment centers that want to do things that are good. So, but it's tiresome when they always hit you with the same mantras and shaming tactics. It is. It's exhausting. Just a few thoughts. There's a bunch of stuff in here. I think I've led these, which is a sort of a break from normal. You want to start this one, Daniel?
Yeah, no, the first thought that I had when I read this is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And this is a blatant example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, well, no, let's not look at some other way that we might be able to approach this. Anyone who's been in and out of rehabs for 28 years, who's never managed to do any more than 6 weeks. So basically they white knuckled it.
That was a not fun 6
what
weeks.
they have to acknowledge. Yeah, there's a point where they have to acknowledge that what they've been doing is not working.
Right.
Okay. And so that's a really important thing. And also, I think that it's important to remember that abstinence or time, whatever you want to call it, is a very poor indicator of success, right?
It means nothing about your quality of life. And that was
exactly
one of the things that frustrated me from day one about AA.
Yeah, like I like to relate it to weight loss. If you're overweight and you want to lose fat, like first off, a lot of people will talk about weight loss, but like one of my favorite nutritionists says, you could chop off a leg and there you go, you've lost some weight. That's not what you're trying to get to, right? What the person is trying to do is to lose fat, right? So it's the same thing when you're talking about your drinking, right? What you want to do is get to that point that you're happy with it, right? The goal is not abstinence per se, it's to get the results that make you happy as a person. And when you're looking at fat loss, the scale is a horrible indicator, right? The measuring tape and the mirror are good indicators because the measuring tape will tell you am I going down in body weight fat or am I going up? and the mirror is going to be a reflection of, am I happy with the results I'm getting or
Yeah.
not?
Do you feel good, and do you like what you see?
Exactly. Do I want to, do I have the impression that I'm in the right direction, and how content am I? And, there is a point where, I'm going to get where I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. I wouldn't want to get leaner than that, you know? So yeah, this idea that time or abstinence is somehow relevant, it comes down to looking at the scale when you're trying to get lean. It's not a useful indicator. It's, am I happy with my level of drinking? Am I happy with the results that I'm getting if I do drink, or how much I drink? Those are proper indicators of success. That's something that's going to sustain you in the long term. So, this person, once they busted it, if they sat down and busted through the mythology, which again, can be done through either the book or the online program or coaching, depending on the person's needs. Once that mythology is busted through, it getting the result that you want deep down is going to be a lot easier, because you're not looking at these very subjective measurements, right? And that's the thing again about AA. It's like a very subjective measurement of things. There's lots of people out there that are miserable as hell, but they're not drinking, and they're like, oh, the only reason, I'm not relapsing is because I have time. That's a horrible way to live your life, for Christ's sake. If the only positive thing that you can say about your life is I'm not doing a certain thing, that reflects a lot about what's going on in your life and how you feel. And like, I feel bad for you, it's time for you to like start looking out in the world and doing something else, trying new things. So yeah, hopefully, whoever wrote this is going to sort through it. And my understanding is you are starting to sort through it. You mentioned seeing the woods, sorting the woods from the trees, or trees from the wood.
Yeah. Once you see it, it can't be unseen. I always tell people
Yeah.
this before they
Yeah.
ask me to take them through the freedom model. Friends of mine that came to me here where I live in Texas, I was like, once I tell you this information, there is no going back. You can't work
Yeah.
for a treatment center. You can't go to meetings, and you cannot pretend it will be ruined for you. You can't do it. Is this really what you want?
Yeah. No, as a rehab counselor, that it destroyed my career. But that's a huge benefit in the sense that I'm no longer out there trying to help people with information that's actually harming them. So that's like I said, it's a huge benefit, and it came at a very big cost, that I'm happy with on many levels, because like we were talking about standing up for the truth before. It's like, I'm sorry, you could criticize me all you want, you could do this, you could do that. It doesn't change facts, right?
Right.
So yeah, we got two more. The next one, like I said, is a pretty quick one. If you want to,
Is this
yeah, it's an article about a guy who.
about substance use? I'm hesitant. I'm pulling up an
Yeah.
article on stream. I'm not actually. I don't. I can't read all this. This is a.
Yeah, no, basically the guy was saying that, like he's in a bodybuilding or whatever,
Yeah,
and
might be a
it's how
bodybuilding guy.
how to continue drinking and stay lean at the same time. And to summarize it, he basically gives himself like a one window a week where he can go off and get hammered because he's a heavy drinker.
Yeah, it can be done. It's just going to make your
Yeah,
life more difficult. It's not going to be healthy. If you're a competitive bodybuilder, you're probably also using
yeah,
exogenous hormones, of which
yeah. No,
many
but
of which, like
like
the oral
the question
varieties, are
relates to,
taxing on your liver, and that can cause liver failure and combination. There's a whole bunch of
yeah.
problems here.
No, without getting to it, like the question is, would you consider this to be moderation? Well, the thing about moderation is that it's a very subjective
Yeah,
thing,
it spans the
right?
whole spectrum
For,
from 100 drinks a day
exactly.
to one drink a day, whatever is
Yeah,
successful for you.
exactly. For one person, moderation would be another person's heavy use, right?
Yeah,
And another, and
Matthew Perry did how many seasons of Friends successfully?
yeah.
I mean, he may have looked bad in some of them.
So
People had to do an intervention and rehab in between seasons. He still did them. He
yeah,
moderated to some extent.
exactly. The point is, if this person is happy with the results that they're getting, that's what matters.
Hmm.
That's the bottom line of all of it. If they are happy with the results they're getting, Yeah, you could call pretty much anything moderation because, like I said, that's very subjective. Um, but this person is acting in a way that they find success, that they are happy with, right? They're achieving their physical goals, and at the same time, they're getting intoxicated to a level that they're happy with, that they're content with. you know so yeah, that's a proper indicator. The fact that this person is happy with the results, that's a proper indicator of success. Now,
Mhm.
is that the healthiest thing to do in life? No. you
Drinking at
know
all is not
but
healthy. Just
exactly, but there's
period.
lots of stuff that's
Yeah.
not healthy that people go out and do. People jump out of perfectly good airplanes all
Right.
the time.
I might go eat
Okay.
a pizza after this. Not good for me.
Yeah, people try to climb Mount Everest. Stupidest idea ever. You could die. In fact, a lot of people die doing
Yeah,
that. Um,
a shocking
but
number of people, and
yeah, it
more
is what it
often than
is.
you think.
It is what it is. And getting in front of people's dreams is not a good thing. Trying to control people and telling them what's right and what's not right. Well, no, we're no longer talking about medical conditions and any type of like physical problem here, are we? We're
Mm,
talking about like moralistic thinking and deciding, infantilizing people and telling them what's right and what's wrong.
right.
So again, this person is being successful in their own eyes, and so in that respect, yeah, it's working for them. So that would be my answer. Would I consider that moderation? Well, that's irrelevant, because if that person considered it to be a moderate level of drinking for themselves, and again, if they're happy with it, there you go, success. Congratulations. So we've hit the 1 hour mark. We got one last question.
All right. High freedom friends. Hello. I love the book, and the concept feels 100% true. I know I am making choices to smoke marijuana every day, and I know. Oh, I just messed it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
And
it's okay.
I know it really isn't doing anything positive for me, and I've been studying this concept for over a month now, and it still feels like I want to choose it every day. I feel so stuck. How do I change my brain really to embody this? So you're not changing your brain. Your brain changes with what you do. There's this misconception that we have to like hack our brains, and that's gonna like make us want to do something different, or like it's going to suddenly make you want to play the piano or drink less. So it's like your brain is designed in such a way so that things you do all the time become easier and you have to think less about. Like if you play a guitar, a musical instrument, or drive the same way to work, it is responding to what you were doing. There's not any hack that we're going to give for you in the book that's going to be like, oh, if you give yourself this level of electrograde shock to your prefrontal cortex, it'll make you stop smoking weed at least once every few hours or something. Like that just doesn't exist. The way that you change your brain is the same way you change your brain doing anything else. Your brain changes doing everything. Every thought that you have, every preference that you change, every consideration that you have, every habit that you build, habits that you stop, love that you fall in and out of. Your brain changes for everything. So this idea that like you need a brain change to necessitate some major life change is just absolute bogus. The brain changes for everything all the times. Oftentimes we have no idea why. Just like with lots of things in the realm of neuroscience, it's just we're kind of on the frontier. And the field has learned a lot. It's still in its infancy state, and there's a whole lot we don't know. We still don't understand how consciousness works. We don't have a clue. We're not even close. That's still in the realm of philosophy. Just to go to show you how far we are away. But how do I change my brain to embody this? You're thinking about this backwards. How do you change your thinking about marijuana so that your lifestyle shifts in such a way that your brain ends up changing as a result? Because I mean, we can even remove the brain change from the equation. The brain change is just the neural adaptations in response to the behavior that you're already doing. So we don't even need to talk about the brain here. We can talk about this purely as a matter of your own perspective in psychology. Something about marijuana is appealing for you to the point that you want to do it every day. It's offering some benefit for you, whether you think it's helping you relax or helping you, unwind after a long day's work. I know that's what replaced beer for a lot of people. Or like if you're a musician, I know plenty of musicians and like doom metal bands and prog bands that think they can only get stoned and write records because they just do the jam notes, and you know how jam bands are and stuff like that. But like there's some belief that you have about weed that makes it appealing to you. It's just more appealing than the alternative. There was a commenter, Mr. Rayner, said Bingo. I needed to hear that. This is from an hour ago or half an hour ago. The other option is not compelling enough. The other option being your marijuana use is not compelling enough to you for some reason. If
Exactly.
you to figure out that reason, we would need to know a lot more about you. And this is again where we would recommend freedom model coaching. But just know that there is a reason or a collection of reasons that the other changing is not a compelling enough option for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep doing what you're doing. Period.
Exactly.
And that's just kind of the beginning of into it, as it's based on the information that we have available to us.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything for that for Daniel?
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. There's this huge emphasis, like on the words I know. I know it isn't doing anything positive for me. Well, I hate to say it, but you're wrong, right? Because if you were not getting any benefit from it whatsoever, you would not do it, right? There's always reasons behind people's behaviors. There's always a reason why we're going to do something. We don't just spontaneously do stuff for no reason at all. So that's the key to it. And you hit the nail on the head when you said this is kind of like a coaching thing. Because you're saying it right here. I want to choose it every day, and the question is, well, why do you want to choose it every day?
Right. So
And
you're in the want to choose it. You don't
exactly.
want to choose it.
And once you get that answer, then it's a question of analyzing that answer and seeing, are those reasons objectively true, right? And oftentimes what the person comes to, they come to the conclusion that a lot of the reasons behind the behavior are simply not true. It's constructs that they've made in their mind. It's ideas that they have about something rather than the thing itself.
Right.
And when that kind of that house of cards just falls down, all of a sudden, even if the alternative behavior is something that's not very compelling, it can still become a lot more compelling than that behavior, right? And so, like some people will tell you, oh, well, it relieves my boredom, for example. And then they realize that it can't relieve their boredom. Well, they're just going to go in the direction of their quote unquote boring life. And then, of course, they're most likely going to decide to do other stuff and so on and so forth. And
Right.
they'll move away from that.
Why is marijuana relieving your boredom more so than any other distraction that you would do? You're just using a physical sensation
Yeah.
or an alteration of your physical perceptions and your motor functions as a distraction. Why is it then any different from you going outside and spinning around in a circle for a half hour and then for letting
Yeah.
your sensory basically interpretation take over and you just fall over? You're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're just finding a distraction. It's not the we doing it.
Yeah. No, the last two sentences are very revealing, right? I feel so stuck. Yeah, I feel for you. Being in that state of ambivalence can be very painful,
Yeah, the limbo
especially,
state, as I called it, it's the nightmare area. It's the worst part of
yeah,
it.
especially if you have no perception of why you're engaging in the behavior that you're engaging in,
Right.
And then, like I said, the last sentence is also very revealing. How do I change my brain, right? So the presupposition is that there's something wrong with your brain that needs
Right.
to be changed, right?
That's like a prerequisite, is a necessary condition
Yeah.
for change. It doesn't work that way, my friend.
Yeah. Your
Uh,
brain is doing just fine. Everything's working just fine.
right.
You just have a preference for whatever reason or reasons. And again, that's what coaching is all about, to help people sort through this stuff. You can sort through it on your own through the book, through the online program, of course. But we're here to help you go through the shortcut. That's usually why people hire coaches in life, is because the coach has read all the books, has studied all the material, and they'll just like, okay, well, this is the fastest way to get to where you want to go, right? And it's like that for any type of coaching. So this is no different.
Right.
So hopefully that is helpful for you. And again, you have access to us. So give a shout out to the number 254-6011. No, what is it?
1-888-424-2626, baby.
2626. Yeah. And, then you could sort through, the different options and see what works for you as a
Right.
person. And, and we can see you move on from this.
Right. And the freedommodel.org, all of the websites have been migrated to the central location. The St. Jude retreat is no longer. Everything is now found at thefreedommodel.org, which includes the coaching, the online program, information about them, contact for people, the bios for myself and Daniel as coaches. Of course, I think the best way, if you want to figure out which coach is best for you, you think would be to watch the Q&As that me and Daniel do to get a feel for probably our personalities. And then obviously Mark and Michelle have been doing this long enough. They have so much content out there in the world. You should you should have a pretty good feel for who they are at this point if you've interacted with any significant amount or even just a little bit amount of Freedom Model material, because they are the face of this definitely for and have been for quite some time. So, highly recommend online coaching, especially with the kind of questions we got today. Questions I noticed are beginning increasingly more specific about people's specific problems. Those are difficult questions to answer, and if we did spend a lot of time answering them, we would spend a lot of time answering questions in ways that would only be helpful to you and would be purely conjecture. So, there's no way of us even knowing that we're right because we don't know very much. We would need you to be here in the call, and that point, you might as well you're in a coaching call at that point. You know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's what I would say about that. So, um, is there anything else?
Yeah, no, just like I said, watch this stuff on YouTube,
Oh, yeah,
like,
be on the
comment,
lookout on the
subscribe,
YouTube stuff out. The thing
click the
I'm
bell.
editing is a lot of stuff. I'm gonna have it. My goal is to have it done and have it uploaded by Thursday, so I have it but done by tomorrow, so it can render and premiere and all that, and I can watch it and listen to myself talk and blah blah blah. And then I'll have my own personal follow up to that, hopefully sometime this weekend between Friday and Sunday as well. So we will have lots of Matthew Perry content as well. Me and Daniel will be doing the other parts of the interview, and
Yeah,
this will just be part one. So if you like it, you're gonna have plenty of stuff to go through. If you hate it, you're gonna have plenty of stuff to hate watch, because I know people in the U.S. and the West love to hate watch stuff. We would love it if you would. I would be honored for you to hate watch me talk about stuff and say things that make you upset. I would be so honored to do that, and I would be doubly honored if you would leave a comment about how much you hate what it is that I'm saying and how that reflects as my intrinsic worth as a person in your eyes. Like that's what really does it for me. I would really appreciate if you would do something like that. Really give us that real deep engagement. That's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. Anyway, before I get carried away, thank you everybody for being here. We appreciate everyone who visited, who participated in the comments. For everyone who watched on YouTube, I could see a few comments came in from YouTube, and I believe there was at least one viewer on whenever I did check. Um, Afterwards, even if you're watching this right now, go check out, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a bunch of shorts. The primary short is sorry, I just somebody said my name and my in the chat and it totally threw me off. Thanks, Indira Aziz.
yeah. I think our next one is actually in 3 weeks because we're the first and oh no, we're the first and third, right? So yeah, it's in 2 weeks, and then after that, we're going to be in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes
So
sense. But yeah,
yeah,
go to the YouTube channel. The primary focus, as I was saying, are the shorts right now. Um, but we will be having much more long form content, and by that I mean long form. And the reaction video, it'll be pretty raw, and then the more edited version for more ADD people or people that are like really into having academic studies flash on screens and me say words that are unpronounceable for some reason. You can watch that version too of the compressed interview
yeah,
whenever that comes out this weekend. So, and then our goal after that is to just keep going up the ladder of big fish, man. There is no one that is safe. If you are out there and you are pushing big 12 step, big rehab, big AA nonsense, like
yeah.
we are
No,
Captain Ahab when we are coming after you, and it is our life mission. Maybe there's a better metaphor for that because I don't remember how I don't think it ends well for Captain Ahab, but we're coming after you. Like it's just like that's the new game plan. Where the branding is shifted primarily to online coaching, and the online program is the center focus. It's the best way we've decided as a team that we can scale this so that we can save as many people as possible at an affordable rate that beats pretty much any rehab that you could, even the most detoxes in terms of costs that you would have to pay out of pocket for. And you get the actual solution to addiction. You get to move on with your life and decide whether or not you want to keep using drugs, which I know is a huge draw for some people. But the cool thing about it is at some point you'll reach the point of indifference and it won't matter anymore. And that's when it gets really cool.
Exactly.
But anyway, once again, 1-888-424-2626. Our emails are below both of our names. Check us out at thefreedommodel.org. We will be back on the 16th, and then not for some time after that.
Yeah, after that, it's going to be 3 weeks.
Yeah, after that, it will be 3 weeks. But I hope everybody enjoyed the broadcast. If you have any other questions, please DM them to us, post us in the Facebook group, email us, let them know. We really appreciate it. And we love all of you, especially you and Dira in the chat for telling me that I was funny. I really appreciate it. You'll have a good one.